Okay, so I want to first talk about this pipe, this specific pipe. It's cast iron, correct? 30 inches wide, 104 years old. Talk about how over the last 104 years, the demand for water through that pipe, maybe the cars on top of it, like the need through that pipe has increased.
So, so I'll just talk about the pipe. I can't say the need through the pipe has increased because the population has grown. The pipe is 104 years old. That is not atypical. 104 years, in that 104 years, as far as we know, it has never had a break. It has leaked a couple of times, but it's not on our list of pipes to worry about. So to us, it was a good pipe. It's called a transmission main in our parlance, meaning there's no services off of it. It's 4 miles long, and its purpose is to fill up the Vernon tank.
What is the Vernon tank?
Vernon tank is a couple blocks away from there, and it's a tank that feeds that neighborhood. Essentially, it provides head pressure so that when you turn your tap on, the water actually comes out.
So on an entire 4 mile section, never once a break in 100
Nope.
years.
Not that we know of. Truth in lending, it's 40 years worth of record. Our records before that are probably not very good, but there's no evidence that we found so far of a break before. And that's not uncommon. All of us really feel for the families that were impacted in this, and we try and operate the system in a way to minimize main breaks. They are inevitable fact of life in water utilities. Typical main breaks nationwide, the measure is breaks per 100 miles per year. For cast iron, generally speaking, I'll give you two numbers. It's either 14 main breaks per 100 miles per year, or between 25 and 30 main breaks per 100 miles per year. Why the two numbers? One number is based upon a survey, a statistically valid survey done by a professor. The other number is based on literature search and seeing what's written. The truth is probably somewhere between 14 and 25. What is our break rate? 9. That's about 60% of the low number and like a quarter of the larger number. So in terms of our industry, we're on the lower end. Partly that's because we manage the system well. We have a world-class asset management program. We have gotten several awards for it, and we talk to people all around the country about how to set one of these things up. The other thing that affects the number of main breaks is Portland is a great place to be a pipe. Sounds kind of odd. A great place to be a pipe. Why is that? You're living in Montana, do you know that? You know what the Missoula flood is?
Yeah.
Okay, the Missoula flood broke, stripped soil out of Montana and eastern Washington, and this place, Portland, was a big eddy. So there's a lot of the soil here that's basically from there. So our soil is very benign. It's not corrosive. That's one of the biggest threats to this kind of pipe, the cast iron pipe, is corrosion. We have very, very low corrosion, and that also contributes to the low main break rate. Other things that make this a good place to be a pipe is it doesn't get really cold here for long periods of time, not like North Dakota or Montana or Stanley, Idaho, for example. So freeze-thaw stresses pipe. So our temperature is pretty good. It's mostly mild all year round. We don't bury very deeply because our frost depth is shallow, so there's not a lot of load on the pipe from the soil. So overall, we feel for the families that were impacted, but we really don't have that many main breaks compared to others. If you happen to be a victim of one, well, that's a bad thing, obviously, but on the whole, we manage our system very well, and the proof is a very low main break rate. Since, say, 2004, we spent about $4 million a year to maintain the distribution system. Right now, we spend 11, 12, 13, 14 million dollars a year. We replace about 6 to 8 miles of pipe a year. Something like 80% or 89% of our cast iron pipe is rated in good or very good condition, partly because we manage it well and partly because this is a good place to be a pipe. It's not subjected to corrosion. It's not subjected to heavy-duty freeze thaw. So it lasts well. And this piece of pipe right here came from Selwood. When they were doing the Selwood bridge rehab, we had to move a bunch of pipe and we cut a piece of this. This stuff was made in 1924. Just looking at it, it's in really good condition. If we hadn't had to move it for the bridge relocation, it would still be sitting there.
So 9 cast iron main breaks in Portland a year.
Nine average.
On average.
That's
Just
all pipes. Now, cast iron of this age group, we have a complex system to manage our pipe, and we manage pipe by cohorts. This piece of pipe and all of its best friends. The cohorts are done by age, type of pipe. What else, Ty? Age, type of pipe.
Material type, age, buried depth, soil.
Yeah. So, and you can look at data. We've got reams of data on our pipe. You can look at the data and see the differences. So we manage by cohorts. This pipe made before 1930, this was manufactured in 1924. Our service life for that pipe is 230 years. That's average. It can last longer, it can last less. If you go, say, 1930 to 1954, the average age, we think the service life is 170 years. And since 1954, we think it's about 140 years. And most of the reason it's gone down is the pipe thickness has gone down. These old pipes were manufactured in sand molds. They weren't terribly accurate, so they made thick-walled pipe. That's a good thing, generally. Now our manufacturing processes have gotten better, and so the pipe wall is a little bit thinner. We still get really good life out of our pipe in Portland, and we want to extract all of that life. Otherwise, we're replacing pipes before we need to, and that's a huge cost to our ratepayers and our citizens. You balance that against minimizing main breaks, and we use a statistical method to analyze it called Weibull curves. It's kind of the leading edge of pipe management in this country for water pipes, and we want to get as much life as we can out of them. By the same token, we want to replace them before they become a problem.
You said 140-year lifespan is what these have, if they were
This
put
one.
in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
From early 19, okay. And then I just want to back up really quickly. You said 9 on average cast iron. I thought there were 200 main breaks, so that's including.
Well, you got to remember it's a measure. It's 9 breaks per 100 miles per
100
year.
miles, thank you.
Yeah. No worries.
But it is that you still stick with that 200.
Yeah,
water main breaks.
we have about 200 water main breaks a year. This particular break, the Skidmore break, I've been here 15 years, and that's the biggest break we've had. Anecdotally, I know of a break that was a 36-inch pipe. I'm not sure exactly when and you have to get older than me to know. I'm not sure exactly when it was, so I think this occurrence is, a 30 or 40-year break. And fortunately, we don't have a lot of these big pipes. They're generally transmission mains that move water around the city. Most of the pipe breaks that we have are this size or smaller, and when they break, they basically make a mess in the street and run down the drain, and they don't really impact anyone. This is a very, very rare, low probability occurrence.
So piggybacking off of that, if it is such a low probability in occurrence, why is the situation not handled differently than it would be should one of those smaller ones break that really causes no damage to homeowners and tens of thousands of dollars?
Well, the situation is handled the same. We have a water control center that is operated and manned 24 hours a day. We have staff on 24 hours a day, and when we find a main break, the staff that goes out, their first job is to figure out how to shut it down, which is what we did. We do the same process all the time. The problem is a 30-inch main break that pumps out 40,000 gallons of water a minute is a whole lot different than one of these things break. It's volume. The process for the fix is the same.
The closest valve, the closest shutoff valve, and this is something that homeowners have raised frustration over it, the closest shutoff valve is 10 blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
And it took hours. I mean, broke around 11 a.m., water reduced by 50% by 2:45, and then by 5 p.m. finally able to get to a level of repair.
So in our minds, that's a really good time, given how we have to respond to these things. We can't just shut these off. If you shut them off, for example, let's say I had some kind of magic gizmo that would shut them off instantly. What that creates is something called water hammer. You've probably heard this in your house. If your pipes aren't tightly mounted, and he's nodding his head yes, if your pipes aren't tightly mounted, you'll hear them rattle. Well, the reason they're rattling is there's a pressure wave banging around in there back and forth because the water was shut off quickly. You can't shut this off quickly. You will blow the rest of the main up. So we shut off slowly at a particular rate so we don't create water hammer, and a pipe this size, and this is half the size, this is only a 16. I can't carry a ring of a 36. Ty and I together probably couldn't carry a ring of a 36. So I think our response was fast. The fire department was there helping. We appreciate that very much. They're good partners in this exercise.
Could you have, over the span of a century, put a shutoff valve closer to where this occurred?
Shutoff valves, 36-inch shutoff valve costs $75,000. And so it's kind of a judgment call. How many valves do you put in where? And I will tell you again, there's never been a main break on this. What do you think your ideal spacing would be? We put in enough valves to control the system. The distribution system, what actually serves homes, has more valves in it. But this pipe was a transmission main. There was no services off it. And I would note that nobody was out of water except the 2 or 3 houses right next to the hole. And that was only because in fixing the pipe, we broke a 2-inch feed line to them. So they didn't get shut off till Sunday. One of our prime drivers is to make sure people stay in water. And that's what they did. Our spacings for valves on transmission mains are typical for the industry, and it's totally an accident of where the break occurred.
And the valve itself there was 12 valves involved in the shutdown. And
12 valves that had to be turned off.
yes, and the reason is large diameter pipe like that is also being fed by multiple other large diameter pipes as it travels through the system. So simply having a valve closer or oriented differently doesn't necessarily mean the shutdown is quicker. There's a lot of different moving parts that go along into it, not the least of which is we had to also maintain the feed to burning tanks, which
Right.
is a big part of supplying water to a region of the city. So it's a lot more complex than simply having a valve in a certain place on large diameter main.
I look at that, and as a homeowner who lives in that area would say is like, well, if there's all these homes here, why not take that precautionary step? Because if a break so catastrophic does occur, you could respond quicker, perhaps shut the water off quicker now that there are so many homes there. It's a residential area with this massive transmission line that no one had any idea was flowing underneath their homes or in the streets next to their homes.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're
Yeah,
not
in
underneath
the
their
streets
house.
it's a residential
Yeah.
area, you know. It's
Yeah.
not like it's just some industrial area where the ramifications aren't as severe. So a lot of these homeowners are questioning, well, if there's all these homes now, and a break that could happen would cause catastrophic effects, why not have some sort of solution that's closer to protect these homes?
As I said, for the distribution system, what actually feeds houses, we have a lot more valves. These valves are terribly expensive, and in trying to determine where the best place to put the valves are, we put them in what we think are the best places to actually do the controlling that we need to do. You could have put another valve somewhere, and if the break happened in a different spot, you would be in exactly the same shape. I think a way to look at this was an extremely rare event on a pipe that was in good shape, and it was shut down as quickly as we could get it shut down based upon all the little factors that are involved, what Ty had just explained a moment ago.
So there are 3 reasons a pipe breaks, as Ty and I were discussing on the phone. It's either the soil, it's the age of the pipe, it's kind of lived its life, or it's construction activity, excavation nearby, which initially Water Bureau had come out and said it could have been construction activity nearby that disrupted this. If those are the 3 reasons that a pipe breaks, and you guys are saying that none of them, as far as your investigation goes, contributed to this.
So let me talk a little bit about this pipe, okay? Ductile iron pipe, which honestly I don't know when it was invented, but it's been manufactured in this country for as long as, since the mid-1800s probably. Ductile iron pipe is strong but brittle. It doesn't like being jiggled or tampered with. For what I'm going to say in the future, more importantly, is if you took an electron photomicrograph of the inside of this thing, you would see little tiny threads of carbon because the manufacturing process is not perfect. And those little tiny threads of carbon are weaknesses. It's not steel, it's carbon. It's like there was nothing there. And over 100 years of use, the chilling and warming of the water, whatever street vibrations are transmitted down to the pipe, it can begin an internal crack. And the truth is, sometimes you don't know. You can do all kinds of speculation. The easy one is if somebody puts a backhoe through it. That's easy. If somebody had been building something in the immediate vicinity, that's pretty easy to figure out. But sometimes, truthfully, you don't know. Main breaks are inevitable. It's written in the literature. You can manage them and you can keep them down. And like a lot of different mechanical failures, sometimes you don't know. And I don't know if you actually went out to the Skidmore break and saw it. A lot of the evidence washes away in the event. There's a tremendous amount of earth moved and so on. So I don't want to try and identify exactly why, except to tell you that this pipe is brittle and it's prone to break. And that's why ductile iron pipe was invented in the 30s and 40s. If you took this, which is ductile iron, and I know you really can't see much of a difference between them, the carbon fiber threads in here are not. There are no carbon fiber threads in here. If you took the same kind of photomicrograph of this piece of pipe, you'd see little dots, not threads. And they have a much harder time connecting. So since probably the 50s, when we replace pipe in the main, we replace it with ductile iron pipe. And over time, the system will become all ductile iron pipe.
But you couldn't replace this massive transmission line.
I had no need to. We use a statistical method to identify pipe failures, and there was no reason to think that this pipe was going to break. If I wanted to replace that pipe, the 4 miles of it, $30 million. And it was a low probability of breakage, so we didn't replace it. And I probably won't replace it now.
So
It's got 30 or 40 years worth of pipe life left, and we try and get all the life out of the pipe that we can that's reasonable before they start breaking a lot. That saves the ratepayers a lot of money.
So the Water Bureau still doesn't know, and it won't ever know why this
You
happened.
might never know. It's like your car. It might break and you might never be able to figure out why did the alternator fail. So we might not know. We manage the pipe using statistical methods because you can't see the inside of it. It's buried so you can't inspect the outside of it. We use something called Weibull curves, which is a statistically based analytical method to look at consequence of failure and probability of breakage. This was a low probability of breakage.
When was the last time you had checked the pipe? Just, I mean, like you said,
So
it's
tell me,
backward
it's
drill.
buried. It's buried. How do
Mhm.
I check it? You can't.
Mm.
One of the benefits of sewer, for example, a sewer is seldom more than 25% full. You can drive a camera down the inside of a sewer line. You can't do this in a water line. Really big ones that you can shut down, there are acoustical methods and various other methods that are really expensive to do. You have to be able to shut the pipe down, let it dry out, bring in a contractor and go through it. We've done that on our conduits, which you could walk through, that bring water into the city. But on smaller pipes like this, you can't. You can't afford to do it. You can't do something like run a fiber optic cable, for example, through this, because inside this, I'm scarring my table up.
Yeah.
Inside this pipe, there's a biofilm from the water. So even if you ran a camera inside this when it was full, it's gobbledygook to see. You cannot see enough. So we use statistical controls, which is typical for the industry. This pipe is in really good shape. The pipe that, the piece, we have the piece I think in the yard, was in excellent condition, and we probably won't know why it decided to break. But that's one break in 100 years. That's pretty good performance.
We're gonna get kicked out of this room in 5 minutes. They're doing like hand signals to me, so
Okay.
I'll let you guys
thank
be efficient.
The biggest question we have is if it's the Water Bureau's pipe, it's your infrastructure, taxpayers pay for it, but you guys manage it and you're tasked with that. How is it breaking, not your responsibility?
So I'm going to say that we're a big entity and we run a big machine. And the liability handling, the insurance handling for the city of Portland is done by the risk management office. In our minds, we have no reason to believe this thing broke by any fault of ours. It's what is called an act of God. And any other questions that you have about risk, liability, and claims, I would suggest you talk to the risk management office, Patrick Hughes, and he can talk to you about that. Our job is to operate the system, make sure we can deliver water to people, make sure we're managing this water system in the best way that we can, and I think we can prove we do a very good job of it. The liability situation and the insurance situation is managed by another part of the city's risk management office, and I would direct you to them.
But they do work with you guys through this process of investigating these people's claims and investigating what happened. They have to work hand in hand with you guys to come to some sort of conclusion, correct?
Correct.
So can you not speak to how, if it's in your jurisdiction and your pipe, how it's not
What
enforced?
I can tell you, and then I'm going to stop talking about this, is that we can't identify fault in this. We find no fault on the city's part. After that, it becomes an insurance action, like you have a claim from an accident on your car. Insurance adjusters and investigators investigate the claim, and I think that's probably enough said. Anything more that you need to know about the city's process for handling claims and so on, you need to take to the city's risk management division.
Okay. Aging infrastructure, obviously a big issue here in the United States. I mean, every city.
It's everywhere. Not just the United States, it's everywhere.
So when you expect a pipe to live 140 years and it'll cost $30 million to replace it, what do you do in the interim to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, I can't make sure that something like this isn't going to happen again. I told you, main breaks are inevitable. It's like your car is going to break down. You can maintain the daylights out of that car and it is still going to occasionally break. What I can tell you is that we do an exceptionally good job of managing our assets, our asset management program. And we received lots of kudos from various parts of the industry for how we do that. And the proof is in the main break rate. Our main break rate is 60% of what the national average is. And that may just be the best that we can do. We do everything we can to manage the system smartly, to make sure that we get pipes out of the way that we know are bad by our statistical method. This was not, I keep pointing at this one, it's not this
Much
pipe.
bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger than this, and I couldn't carry it. That was just not on the horizon. It had never broken before. And that's true industry-wide.
So industry-wide and here in Portland, do you just have to wait for something to break to fix it?
In the terms of pipe, sometimes it's a little more complicated than just waiting for something. Why would I replace something that there's no indication it's going to break? And one of the challenges in this, as I explained, is there's no way, this is buried. There's no way to really look at it without digging it up. And once I've dug it up, I've spent a pile of money. I think that we manage this statistically, and we do a very good job of it, and we certainly beat the industry norms, the city norms for this kind of event.
But typically you don't replace a pipe until it breaks, or it's extended its life and it could break soon.
Typically, no, we wouldn't.
Okay.
So
So,
I want to add that we know how to look at high risk and high consequence pipes, and those are the ones that we prioritize for replacement.
So part of this analytical method of looking at pipes is we have the Weibull curves. It's a statistical way of looking at pipes. We divide all of our pipe up by cohort. That's age, type of pipe, when it was installed, and so on. And once we have all of that data, we look at what is the likelihood of failure of the pipe, which is a lot about performance. How many breaks per 100 miles have we got? How many breaks on this section of pipe? How many leaks on this section of pipe? That tells you the likelihood of failure. And then we look at the consequence of that failure and make decisions accordingly. It's likelihood and consequence make risk.
last question, I don't know if this is one for you. If something like this can happen again and you can't prevent it from happening again, does the Water Bureau perhaps work with the risk division or other departments within the city to set up a separate fund that could help these homeowners? If you guys aren't responsible, you're not liable, how can you help people that have dealt with the risk?
I think that we help people the best way we can by smartly managing this system with the tools we have available. And I think I'll leave it at that. The city has a risk program, a risk management program that's insurance. Both insurance companies and the city's self-insured for some things, and I leave that entire conversation to the risk management division. My job is operating this water system to the best of my ability and my staff's ability, and I think they do a fantastic job. This break was shut down in a few hours. Given what we had to do, I think that was very good. And the whole thing was buttoned up in like 36 or 38 hours. I don't think it gets better than that.
And what could you tell these homeowners that are dealing with this now? No fault of their own either.
That I'm really sorry it happened to them. The odds of this happening to any individual homeowner are really, really low. That does not necessarily help a lot when it has happened to you. And beyond that, you need to talk to the risk management division who manages the city's insurance and claims process. I'm not an expert.